Words have the power to bring healing and hope to a person's life, but words also have the power to destroy all hope. That's what the phrase incompatible with life means to me. It is a destroying phrase that brings no hope to a vulnerable, heart-aching situation. Lily Joy, my tiny baby girl, was born the 9th of December 2011 at 9:18 a.m. I found out at my 20-week scan in my local hospital that something was wrong. It was not until I had a more specialised scan in a major hospital in Dublin that I was told those awful words. The doctor scanned me and said, "Your baby has what looks like trisomy 18 or Edwards syndrome." His next words were, "It's lethal, fatal and incompatible with life." My world fell apart with these words, and I looked at my very active baby and thought, how can he say this? Look at her, she's wriggling around, being camera shy, and he just said she was incompatible with life. She's obviously not dead, so why did he say this? Of course, what he meant was that she wouldn't live outside the womb. He never explained that to me. I just thought in my grief-stricken fog that he wasn't making any sense at all. Even though my darling girl only lived for 4 short hours after she was born, there is no doctor on this earth who could have told me she was going to die after 4 hours of living and breathing, as she could have rallied and proven them wrong again. Most of the doctors that had looked at my case were surprised she was living so long inside me, with her heart in such bad shape. I had at one stage 3 heart surgeons looking at her heart, and they were amazed she was doing so well. I'm privileged to be here today to speak for my beautiful daughter, who could not speak for herself. She needed my protection, and I tried with all my heart and soul to help her live and let her know how loved and I wanted to grow up. By being part of this Every Life Counts initiative, we're hoping it will bring hospice care into Ireland, which at this present time is very ill-equipped to deal with parents that find themselves in this situation, and also to bring the much-needed support to parents who need to be told the facts about their child's life and not educated guesses on how long your child would survive without the actual evidence to back up these claims. Did anyone know that a baby with trisomy 18 can live for an average of 30 days? And only by luck, I was given the Soft Ireland website, which informed me that one child had lived until she was 25 with full trisomy 18. These details were not given to me by any doctor. These facts I had to find out by myself. It is only by luck and perseverance on my part that I had great support from the hospital in which Lily was born. We need complete holistic care so we can make informed decisions on what's right for our child, as far too often we're being terrified into doing amniocentesis, which we think is to help our little babies, but it's only so they can confirm their death sentence. And even at one point I had a doctor say that if I was in England I'd have options for a termination. They just kept saying these hopeless words. All I wanted them to do was give my girl every chance for some time to be out of the womb. And they didn't feel that was my right to have, so I had to fight for it. My Lily Joy died in my arms, surrounded by my love, and her last minutes here was with her mother and father, telling her how much we loved her. These are very, very treasured memories, which we will have for a lifetime, knowing that she knew we had done everything we could to get her here. She is my daughter. She was my daughter, and she will always be my daughter. And death cannot change that. We're just hoping that these horrible words will not be used again, as we shouldn't have to hear them. And we should be given all the care and compassion that every parent receives when they have a normal pregnancy, not shunned and ridiculed for our decisions to help our sick babies live.
Thank you, Grace. My daughter Isabella was born in August 2014. She lived for just 54 days. That was her life, not a long life, but her life. The condition she had was labelled to be incompatible with life, and it's not. Isabella was really sick, but her condition is not incompatible with life. In fact, there are many people alive today with this condition. No doctor can definitely say how long a child will live for. And I feel that the value of these short lives is being hugely underestimated. Every single second I had with Isabella was special, and every person who got to meet her and love her now grieve for her with me. I cannot explain the impact she's had more than many do who live until their 90s. So what does this term mean for a baby and its family? It means no help, no hope, no intervention. It means every baby diagnosed with one of these conditions is written off before they are even born. Their expectant parents are told that their baby will not be monitored during labour. The baby will not receive medical intervention. This term means that in the doctor's eyes, it is not a real baby. It's incompatible with life. This term gives no hope, and there is always hope. We need our babies to receive the same care and dignity as any other baby, to be given the same chances and to be shown the same basic humanity, and this term automatically removes these rights. That's why I'm supporting Every Life Counts and the Geneva Declaration on Perinatal Care. We want to show you our children, the babies who they say are not compatible with this world. We do not want babies like them to be discriminated against anymore. We want better support for those families for whatever short time they are with us, and we want their lives to be as important as the life of any child. Following the perinatal hospice care model would allow families to access supports to care for their baby, create memories, access pastoral care, and have follow-up support if and when the baby goes home. I have spoken to many women who lost babies like mine, and they are forever left with what ifs. What if they'd helped her with her breathing? What if they'd tube fed her? What if? We know these conditions are serious life-limiting conditions. We know this. But the term incompatible with life is robbing children of any chances, not their condition, but the ignorance and medically meaningless language which has become attached to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hello, my name is Pisco and this is my wife Macarena.
Hello.
We've known each other since we were kids. We started to date in our early 20s and we got married soon after that. Our first child came a year later, in the summer of 2004. Her name is Loreto. She's now 10 years old, an excellent student, plays all kinds of sports and reads about a book a week. A year after Loreto was born, Macarena was expecting our second child. Great news. However, near the end of her pregnancy, we learned about complications with the baby. Ultimately, the birth had to be induced, and we were told that the child could be born alive and then die, or be born dead. We were very frightened, really afraid. So you can imagine our happiness when we first heard the cry of our newborn son, Nico. We were thrilled.
So much so that when the doctors told Kisco that our son was born with Down syndrome, his first response was, "Thank God."
It was a big surprise to us. There are no cases in any of our families, and Macarena was just 26 at that time.
Kids with Down syndrome have many health complications, but to me, the worst part was the congenital heart disease and the thought of having my baby go through an open heart surgery. It would take Nico 3 months before he was strong enough to endure the surgery. His operation was on February 28, 2006. Everything went well, and from that time on, Nico began a time of slow recovery. Today he's 9 and a strong boy, plays football a lot and loves superheroes.
Then we had another girl, Rocío. She is a force of life. No one can stop that one. She's 7 years old today. And after Rocío, we got more good news. We were expecting our 4th child. However, something was not quite right with the baby. Further examinations confirmed that, in fact, we were having a daughter and a second child with Down syndrome.
Believe it or not, the diagnosis of Down syndrome part didn't faze me at all. What terrified me was the thought of a second open heart surgery.
Her name is Fatima, and she was born with audience of over a dozen doctors observing closely in the delivery room.
And then again, Fatima needed to gain weight and strength to undergo open heart surgery. She struggled for a while. Then we were put on a waiting list. Fearing for her health, we pushed to secure a date for her operation. Amazingly enough, it was set for February 28th, the same identical date at Nico's, and with the same surgeon. Thank God everything went well. Within a few days, we had Fatima at home with her brother and sisters.
And so there we were, raising 4 children, 2 of them with special needs, and all under the age of 7. Happy as can be.
Yes, so happy that we went for another baby.
Another girl. She was born only a month ago, and she's very healthy. Her name is Teresa. Now, we are 7 strong, and there is never a dull moment in our house. We have our struggles like all families, but all these struggles are nothing compared with the unspeakable joy that each one of our children bring to us. Not one day goes by that we don't give thanks for the great gift of life that we've been given.
We could be here for hours and hours telling you an amazing story filled with humor, tenderness, excitement, adventure, and love.
In fact, when we look back on these past 12 years, we realize that the only thing that we fear for our children was the possibility of their death. And what we wanted most was to celebrate their life. And so my wife and I can tell you that the idea that any of our children were at any point incompatible with life is ridiculous.
And stupid, I'm sorry, but it is. All children are made for life. They are the gift of life.
Thank you
very much.
Myself and a number of other parents of children with life-limiting conditions, along with the support group Every Life Counts, are here to represent our children and many other families from around the country. We are here to support the launch of the Geneva Declaration on perinatal hospice care, so that it is implemented in all maternity units in Ireland, and to end the use of the term incompatible with life, so that babies like ours are treated with the same respect, compassion and dignity as any other child before and after birth. We wish to tell our stories and share our experiences of a very difficult but rewarding time in our lives when we were given the diagnosis of a fatal fetal abnormality, and how the use of the term incompatible with life has impacted throughout our journey. Although services in Ireland have improved over the years, the level of care is patchy throughout the country, and we feel this is unacceptable. Families who have been lucky enough to encounter this care have said it was a very important part of their healing, so that they are treated in such a way that it gave them the opportunity to meet their much-loved baby and spend some precious time with them. For me personally, it was important to make memories and feel some sort of joy, love and comfort in these tragic circumstances. My own personal experience of care throughout my pregnancy was quite good, apart from having to listen to the term incompatible with life over and over again. We chose to give our baby the best possible chance of life, and most of the medical team we dealt with were a great support during this time. But there were some places where improvements should and could be made. For instance, my baby boy Shan was diagnosed with trisomy 18, otherwise known as Edwards syndrome, at 21 weeks into my pregnancy. We had an amniocentesis done at the time, which confirmed Shan's condition, and to this day I regret having that test done. But I was so distraught at the time I didn't actually realise what was going on, and I feel I wasn't given enough time to make a proper decision. I had no idea what was wrong with him, but after we had the diagnosis confirmed, I asked for some information on this condition. I was told there was no information available at the hospital, which give to me, which left us no other option than to go home and Google it. Little did I know that once they had that diagnosis on paper, my son's life would be written off in an instant with no hope or positivity about what the future may bring. I can completely understand now how some people would be led into thinking that a termination would be for the best, and then look back on that decision with regret afterwards. In my opinion, the term incompatible with life is overused in maternity hospitals. I began to really hate those 3 words, and at one point I had to ask the doctor to stop referring to my son in this way, as I felt it took him from me. This term is not a medical diagnosis. It is medically meaningless, offensive and dehumanises unborn babies with a disability. As time went by, I realised this term is merely an opinion and should not be used when describing unborn children who may have a life-limiting condition. This term represents everything that is wrong in this field and gives doctors an excuse to refuse to carry out beneficial medical interventions after birth. It was horrendous for me to learn that my baby would not be helped medically in any way after he was born. Basically, he would be left to die. This term gives doctors an opportunity to write off these babies before they are even given a chance at life, and this needs to change. Although the hospital I attended did have a form of perinatal hospice care programme in place, I don't feel Shan was looked after in the appropriate way. The care I received before Shan was born was quite good, but what we received afterwards was unacceptable. We chose comfort care for him after birth, mainly because we didn't have any other option. When Shan was born, he was handed to me. We were put in a room and left alone. To fend for ourselves. I had to demand that he be examined. And when I asked for assistance with feeding him, I was told, and this is a quote, "Try it yourself, and if he doesn't take any milk, sure, it doesn't matter." He wasn't even given oxygen when he was struggling to breathe. I was so distraught. I felt completely lost and didn't know what to do. Shan needed help. I wasn't expecting miracles. I just wanted my son to have his basic human rights met, and I don't feel he did. And all because in their eyes, Shan was incompatible with life. But I'm proud to say that my little boy defied the odds and went full term. Born on August 9th, 2014, alive and breathing on his own. He spent 2 amazing days in my arms and knew nothing but love in his little lifetime. He showed us he was compatible with life. Although short, it was his life all the same. He is my hero, a true inspiration to all that knew him, and I will never regret my decision to carry on with my pregnancy. At the end of the day, our children deserve better. We as parents deserve better, and things really need to change. Please listen to us. We know what we're talking about, and we will stand together to remember our little ones and fight for those who are faced with these situations in the future. Thanks for listening.
The doctor was kind. He explained to me that my daughter was missing most parts of her brain and skull, and thus would only be able to survive her birth for a few hours. He explained to me that if I wanted, he would take care of me and my daughter for the remaining weeks and months. My daughter's life would be short, but everything would be done for her and me to be well during that time. 2 weeks later, I had to go back to my obstetrician. This appointment was completely different. For this doctor, my daughter wasn't a child. She was a thing, incompatible with life. Get rid of it as soon as possible and start again with another baby that is worth it, were his exact words. I had heard heartbeats at each appointment. I had felt movements for weeks. I had seen my tummy growing week by week. How could this doctor tell me that my baby was incompatible with life in the presence of all those signs of life? We choose to carry to term our daughter, convinced that limited time did not mean limited experience. A lesser body did not mean less valuable, less well. My daughter was born on July 18, 2000. As predicted, she died a few hours after birth. But she did not just live a few hours. She was alive for 9 months in my womb, 13 hours in our arms, and her memory will live forever in our hearts. She was a beloved daughter, a sister, a granddaughter, a niece. Her name was Anuk, and she was worth everything.
wanted me to have an amnio test to pinpoint the exact condition, which she had, but I declined due to the risk of miscarriage. But doctors were very keen to inform me that the outlook wouldn't be very good, as this was a cluster of abnormalities and would be down to a chromosome disorder. We were given no support, no help, no guidance, but we were told to go and look up the internet for different conditions of what it might be. It was when Clodagh was 1 day old. I carried Clodagh full term, and I had a natural delivery with her. But before that, doctors had, I mentioned a couple of times too, that children with these sort of conditions or abnormalities, they wouldn't survive birth. She could die in womb, but no, I carried her full term. And it was when Clodagh was 1 day old, after she was born, and they tested her, they come back and used those awful words to me, incompatible with life, as they told me that she had trisomy 13, also known as Patau syndrome. This little girl, she was lying in my arms, breathing, alive, when the doctor said to me, incompatible with life, and I'm thinking, how can she be incompatible with life? She's alive, she's breathing. I felt they dehumanized her by saying to me, she's like a flower. She won't grow and bloom, rather she'll just simply wither away. And because of this, they would not do anything to treat her, nor would they revive her while in hospital. We immediately decided on hearing this, we would take her home with us. I couldn't bear the thought of my child being just left alone in a hospital. I had our children at home, so I couldn't split my time, and I thought, if my daughter's going to die, she's coming home to her family. At home, we had to care for our daughter ourselves. We had to approach our family doctor and insist we got oxygen, after a friend of mine suggested to me that maybe it might help her breathe. I was in no fit state or no, to think of these things myself. Clodagh spent 33 precious days of life with us. All my children and all the extended family came to our home to meet her, to hold her, to cuddle her, to love her. Having Clodagh at home with us was like having a little piece of heaven in our home. She brought a peace about her. She had everybody just love. The love that came to our house when that little girl was there, I just can't put into words. I'm calling for the term incompatible with life to be abolished, as it is so hurtful to dehumanise severely disabled children. It gives a false picture in people's minds that these children are some kind of freaks that don't even resemble children, when we know this is not true. From my own experience and what I've heard from other parents, we need assurance that our babies' lives are valued by others, even though it may be brief or imperfect. They need to hear the child matters and will be effectively treated, and parents supported, not just abandoned and left on their own. Thank you.
Thank you again to all the mums and dads that have come today. It's such a powerful witness to hear your stories. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tracy. And I just want to again acknowledge the wonderful testimony of the mothers and indeed father there today before us here at the United Nations, and to thank them for their sterling work that they've done in Ireland in relation to this very, very sad terminology that has crept into our health services. The mic not working, they always try to silence me in Ireland as well, so it's nothing different. It's nothing different at the United Nations, but we persevere. What I'm doing as a parliamentarian, and I'm greatly encouraged, first of all, by the support I've got from the wonderful people in Every Life Counts, but especially from the parents themselves who have been through this situation. And I'm really heartened to see that we've 8, I was told, parliamentarians in Spain, a cross-party group in Northern Ireland now, and I know that there's a good number in England, in the House of Commons as well, that are very interested in this issue. and I think it's the only way forward. I brought forward a small, short piece of legislation. It's called Disabilities Amendment Bill 2014, and it's just a piece of legislation. I have received pretty promising support for it across parties in our Parliament in Ireland. I hope to introduce it when I go back before the end of March. Certainly, there's a break next week for our national holiday, St. Patrick's Day, and hope to introduce it before the end of March. I am promised a lot of widespread support, but I think this testimony here today to the United Nations, especially in this very important, declaration here, is going to support the bill also, and will ask other parliamentarians to support it. We're not looking for any penalties or any prosecutions or anything like that, as some legislation or most legislation stipulates. We're just looking for a bit of humanity to be introduced, and that terrible terminology, as we've heard the testimony of the mothers there, be removed, incompatible with life. As has been clearly stated by the medical people here and others, and from research, it has no medical standing whatsoever. It's unnecessary, it's crude, and it's heartless. And it's an interesting time in Ireland at present when we are discussing a lot of equality legislation, and listen back to our national broadcaster only at the weekend talking about the 40 years since they came into their own and the changes in Irish life. And one of them was mentioned, that words like words like calling people spastics, calling people illegitimate children, they've all been removed through great effort, and they're just not spoken now. So I am longing for the day, and I believe we will get that day when this terminology will be removed from hospitals in Ireland, especially maternity hospitals. And I want to give my full support to the situation of the call for perinatal hospice, because thankfully I've been through, and my wife, we've 8 children, and I know the joys, and I know also the trepidations all the way through the different stages of pregnancy and early pregnancy. I have 2 grandchildren in the last 12 months, so I can appreciate the trauma, the stress, but the joy and the love. And the love to have the baby, and I can appreciate where the mothers are coming from. So I think that we need to have those kind of, as our colleague from Poland said, we need to have the space, we need to have the rooms, we need to have the counselling, proper trained staff there. When a diagnosis like this is delivered, first of all, those terminology, which I don't like to keep repeating, won't come into the equation. But there will be people there then to explain the diagnosis, and we won't have a situation where mothers and fathers are told to go home and Google it. I think that's just a total vacuum, and it's just not acceptable. So that we will have services, because we have some great organisations in Ireland looking after children with special needs and sick children. I name one of them is a Jack and Jill, which I'm involved with, foundation, and of volunteers, groups, and very professional dedicated nurses and carers do tremendous work, and they're only too willing to help. So it's a matter of, I suppose, understanding and trying to get bills like this onto the statute. It's a short bill. As I said, no penalties, just greater education and awareness, and introduce humanity into the language, and just get rid of that terminology, as I said, because it doesn't have any medical doesn't have any medical standing whatsoever. And for me, and I suppose parliamentarians around Europe and the world, to fight for perinatal hospice services. And I give that commitment today, and I have given it already, but I give it today here in this prestigious location to work might and main to try and have this bill enacted, to try and get other parliaments to engage. And I'm very heartened with the support from different countries here today, and I think it's a matter of just education, understanding, and humanity, and I'm delighted to be involved, and I'll finish with that.
Thank you so much, Maddie, for your unwavering support. And now we're going to have Barbara Farlow from Canada, who we're delighted has joined us today. And Barbara's daughter Annie was diagnosed with trisomy 13. And Barbara has published groundbreaking research on the experiences of families whose children have been diagnosed with trisomy 13 or 18.
Hello everybody. Thank you to the speakers before me. I especially appreciated the testimony of the mothers. And I'm going to shorten my talk a little bit because I have some mothers' testimonies. Next slide, please. Next one. This is my daughter Annie. Annie was born with trisomy 13. Of course, we were also given the incompatible with life label, but we decided after doing research that we would give Annie every reasonable chance to live and to grow. And she was growing. She was actually getting somewhat fat. She gained 4 pounds in the first 2 months, and she smiled for the first time when she was 75 days old. When she was 80 days old, she had respiratory distress, and we took her to a children's hospital that's known to be one of the best in the world. She died within 80 days. The doctor told us, within 24 hours. The doctor told us that she needed surgery, she wouldn't survive, and when she suddenly declined, we decided that the best thing was to let her pass away peacefully. However, mother's instinct just nagged at me that something was wrong about what happened, and we acquired the records, the medical records, and found that a do not resuscitate order had been placed in her file without our knowledge. But worse yet, lethal quantities of narcotics had been signed out in her name, and all of the required records were absent. I said to the chief of nursing, I have the sense that somebody gave my daughter something lethal to cause her death. Please tell me that didn't happen. And she just looked down at her lap and was silent. Next, please. The coroner's pediatric committee reviewed Annie's death and said the final 24 hours of care were not appropriate. And worse yet, it was by no means certain that Annie needed the surgery that had been described to us. So we don't know that she should have died on that day. Go ahead. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about what's in the literature and how this labeling of incompatible with life has led to some of the negative experiences that the mothers have shared with us today. For those of you who don't know, trisomy 18 and 13 are the second and third most common conditions. They're not extremely rare as genetic conditions go. Interestingly, back in the 1960s, when these conditions were first identified, the survival rate to 1 month was far in excess of what it is today. And the medical technology in neonatology in the 60s was such that a 4-pound premature baby would often die. These children live to be, 70%, 56% to a month. So that really makes you scratch your head. And sure enough, in this citation, in a recent article, the doctor said recent studies have reported shorter survival rates, leading some to suggest patients are dying younger because infants who have trisomy 13-18 that are born in recent years receive less aggressive care because of the expectation they will die. Next, please. This is a horrible quote published in one of the leading medical American journals, the Journal of the American Medical Association, The Lancet. A newborn infant with trisomy 18 should be considered as a patient with a hopeless outlook who ought not to be subjected to invasive procedures. We believe that because of their limited life expectancy or profound mental retardation, such patients ought to be transferred from the intensive care unit and be allowed to die. But letting them die may be insufficient. Perhaps we ought to help them to die. Imagine such a paper being published. Then I discovered that there's actually an international group that got together, a resuscitation committee, and decided that children with trisomy 13 and 18 should not receive newborn resuscitation based on the expectation of a short life or unacceptably high morbidity among survivors. I was just shocked that such a recommendation, which has been adopted by most developed countries in the world, could occur. The Americans accepted it, the Canadians, and the European Resuscitation Council. Go ahead. This just gives you a little sample of what's in the medical journal. These pictures, black and white pictures, are typical pictures that you would find in medical journal textbooks. And they really show the children sort of in the worst condition. It's almost like they look for a worst case, and I swear they pinch the baby to make sure they cry at the same time. And yet we contrast that with the pictures that families will share of their children. They're beautiful pictures. You can see the difference, the object versus the human child. Next, please. This study that was done on parents of children with trisomy 18 revealed that all families were told there was no hope for survival. and that most indicated they were advised an induced abortion was the best option. Next, please. This I found in Canada. We have very aggressive prenatal network to identify and to encourage termination. And this was in a PowerPoint presentation shown at all of the hospitals in my province. And the picture of the baby would have been stillborn. It's a severe case of trisomy 13, but the doctor chose to put the picture of that baby next to a cyclops. And there was another picture of a baby with fused leg condition next to a mermaid. And effectively, this dehumanizes the children. It's saying that these aren't human children. These are monsters. These are mythical creatures. Next, please. And I like to contrast that picture we just saw with this picture. It's just beautiful. The child has the same severe abnormality. And you can see the brother and sister see this as their sibling. The child has passed, but they recognize the humanity in that child. Go ahead. In my own province of Canada, I found that there was the assistive devices program was very discriminatory in the sense that apnea monitors were specifically not allowed for infants who had apnea with a pre-existing condition. In other words, a birth defect or a genetic condition. If those babies had apnea, no apnea monitor for them. In other words, let them die. So I was very fortunate to meet two of the, I call the best doctors in North America, one in Canada, one in the United States, and they said, you know, as doctors we were taught it was best to let these children die. It was easier for the families, don't provide any care, just keep them comfortable, let them pass. But what you're telling us about the mother's testimony is that's not true. So let's do some research, because nobody has ever asked the mothers about their experience, or the fathers. So we had a record number for a rare condition, relatively rare. 332 parents was astounding. And you can see here, we found so much information, but this is, in a nutshell, the contrast between what parents were told by the doctors versus what they actually experienced, including 75% reported that their marriages actually improved. And everybody reflected on the life of their child as the mothers today as positive, and they were glad that they had their child. Next, please. And I'm going to end there to let the other speakers. We've heard testimony from parents. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Barbara. So now, I'm delighted with my colleagues to launch the declaration. So we'll just read it here. At the moment, it's actually received tremendous support from medical practitioners. Over 210 have signed it so far, and it's been endorsed by 27 NGOs at the moment. So we'll just read it out. So it declares, as medical practitioners and researchers, we declare that the term incompatible with life is not a medical diagnosis and should not be used when describing unborn children who may have a life-limiting condition. We acknowledge that there exists no medical necessity to terminate such pregnancies in an otherwise healthy mother. And we fully support the development of perinatal hospice services for families who are told that their unborn child may not live for very long in the womb or after birth. Thank you.